fourth episode of the Train and Learn series. Today we have James joining us. He's currently doing some work with the Seattle Storm. We'll get kind of into his journey and kind of what brought him to where he is now. So James, you just kind of want to start off with kind of your journey in training and kind of where you started and kind of where you are now.
Yeah, man. First, Chase, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah. Definitely appreciate it. It's definitely a humbling experience. So the beginning, just like everybody in our profession, I started as a high school athlete, basketball, track, tennis, boxing, and that transitioned into college life where I just continued with boxing. I was about 150 pounds, soaking wet, knew a lot about body weight workouts, but I was also 18 and I was really cocky with stuff like that, you know. It wasn't until I joined the military is when I really started to learn more about calisthenics and actual body weight workouts. I actually started to dial in my nutrition. I had a mentor who actually started showing me the way, and I jumped from 150 to 180 in a matter of months. So definitely a big goal, a hurdle that I overcame on that one. For any of my hard gainers out there, 10 pounds is amazing, you know. So from there, I started going through different aspects of training. CrossFit was big when I first went in, and I started learning all about Metcons, and I actually did a deadlift for the first time at age 24 on deployment, and it was horrible. I look back at it and it's just like, man, it was cringeworthy. So after CrossFit and other deployments and stuff like that, I ended up being in a shop with a bodybuilder. He was competitive. He looked fat in his uniform, to be honest with you, but once he took the uniform off, he was just shredded. He was about 10-12% year round. And he started teaching me bodybuilding techniques. So mind-muscle connection, time under tension, and actually how to eat for function versus taste. Let's see, after that, I got out. I started talking with a bodybuilder from Australia. He is the one who kind of pushed me forward into the training realm. I wasn't happy sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, plus being on call outside of that. So he really gave me the push I needed. I talked with my girl and she said, hell yeah, go for it. And I quit my job 2 weeks later. So I put my 2 weeks in that day, started personal training school. I went to NPTI, National Personal Training Institute of Colorado, and I started 2 weeks late. I was behind the power curve on everybody. I felt lost. I didn't know if it was something that I could actually pursue at that point, just because I was so far behind. It wasn't until I started spending that extra time with a couple of the instructors that really took me under their wing, got me caught up. Anatomy, if you've taken it or anybody out there else has taken it, it is jungle fuck, for lack of better words, man. It is something that you really have to concentrate, and it's really based off of memory. But if you can make it make sense to you, then everything just really starts to click. And once I started learning the muscles and the joint actions, everything just clicked for me, fell into place, and I knew that there's nothing else that I wanted to do out of with my life. So when my instructors took me in, I started learning more about powerlifting. One of the instructors was a CSCS, and he had his USAW 1 and 2. And he was actually Olympic powerlifter himself. So it was pretty cool to kind of see that aspect of it. And then everything transitioned from body weight all the way until the athlete, man. I saw how everything got tied together, and I knew right then and there that, hey, this is for me. Graduated MPTI, and I started working at a big box gym, 24-hour fitness. And you know, when you're a brand new trainer, you have all this knowledge in your head. You just want to dump it on people. And I failed miserably at it. I could not pay my bills. I gave it 90 days. And it was just the selling aspect, man. I didn't like it. 24-hour fitness is, if you know, like they're big on selling supplements as well as their training programs. I didn't like that aspect. You know, me and the general population, we get along. As long as you have that spark, that's what really makes that connection, you know. I actually quit training for about 6 to 8 months after 24-hour fitness. I actually started painting houses, which, hindsight now, it's pretty good, hard work, learned how to paint, how to do it efficiently. And I mean, got paid good money for it. So
There you go.
it was an experience to say the least, man. But after that little break, I took some time to reflect on what I wanted to do with my life and what direction I wanted to keep it going. And I heard through the grapevine that the Colorado School of Mines was actually doing a strength conditioning internship. Trevor Florendo, he had been working on that program for about 5 years. He was a volunteer doing all the programs all by himself until they actually offered him a position. They made a position for him, which I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So made the first cut for the internship, ended up getting it with 4 other people. And that's where I fell in love with strength and conditioning, man. Basically, I worked with the football players, basketball, track, and I tended to stay more towards the football guys. It was a better culture, really intense. They were really smart guys. So the School of Mines is a really big engineering school. And so those guys love to know the why behind everything, right? Their mind was just wanting to know and crave more of that knowledge. So I absolutely loved it. If I could not give them the reason why, I'm not going to sit there and bullshit them. So I went and found the reason. So it actually made me a better coach in the long run, working with them. So from there, I actually moved to Seattle on a whim. Our lease was up and we were like, hey, let's go to the West Coast. Why not? And Seattle's a little bit cheaper than Cali. So moved to Seattle. I ended up working for LA Fitness for a few months. Started going to school using my GI Bill. And to be honest, I wasted, for lack of a better term, wasted the GI Bill. I just went to school just to collect a paycheck. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that Tim Vagan was the project director for the personal training program. And I read his background. I sent him an email. I was like, hey, I would really love to come sit down and talk with you. I feel like, this could be a great relationship. He invited me in open arms. And to this day, he's a great mentor to me and an even better friend. Like him himself, he was a former Olympic athlete. He worked with the NFL. He works with a lot of the Olympic teams, swimming, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was in his office every day, picking his brain, and I just continued to learn. He's the one who actually kept me going in this path that I've been on. Awesome. And he slowly started letting me into his network, which I'm truly grateful for. Not everybody wants to help you when they can. So I want to help everybody that I can. So I'm glad that he did that with me. Mm-hmm. And so he knew the nutritionist for the Storm. I heard again through the grapevine that they were looking for somebody. Didn't know if it was true. Reached out, and I didn't hear back from Emily, who's the head strength coach. I didn't hear back for about 4 weeks. Sent another email, nothing. I was like, okay, whatever. We'll just kind of move on. And all of a sudden, I get an email the next week or so. I'm so sorry, my email, it was just shut down. I was like, oh, cool. So this is still a thing. Awesome. So it was a cool surprise, right? Yeah. And we sat down for coffee. It was only supposed to be, I think, 30, 45-minute sit down with her, and ended up being about a 2-hour conversation. And the rest is history, man. She brought me in as the intern and did such a good job. She brought me back as the assistant strength coach this year. So, but we also see how everything's going now, right? So yeah. Everything's kind of shut down. So great first season.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of making your way through your journey, what's some key differences you've seen with training different types of people? So say the college athlete versus training general population or something like that. Or kind of what draws you towards kind of more the sport specific type stuff?
Yeah, so doesn't matter who we're talking about when it comes to athletes or people in general. First and foremost, I'm going to just say that my goal is not to make you a better baseball player, not to make you a better basketball player, not to make you a better football player. My job is to get you to be a better athlete, right? I want to set that base, and it is the coach's job to make you a better baseball player, football player, basketball player. Okay. I just need you to be able to move, right? The more we move, the better we move, the better you're off, right? The better you can transfer that into whatever sport. As far as the general population, if you're moving, I'm happy. Right? If you're not sitting on the couch eating a ton of ice cream, I'm happy.
Sure.
Okay. It's going to depend on the goal and where you're at with your current situation, right? So my answer is it depends, right? And I hate that answer. Have you ever been talking to someone and they're like, it depends, and then they just like leave it alone?
Sure.
Right? That's like my biggest pet peeve, man. If you say it depends, tell me what it depends on, right? So like I said, it depends on where you're at with your training, where you're at with your nutrition, with everything, and what are you willing to sacrifice for that, right? Because everything's always a give-take relationship. Right? Let's see. I would say that if you can keep it basic, then you're going to succeed. If you're consistent, then you're going to succeed. Right. So a lot of the higher athletes that you get, the more elite, they just move better, right? They're more efficient with their movements. They're not wasting energy, for lack of a better term, doing things that they're not supposed to. Right. So, I mean, let's take a sprinter, for example. Sprinters are tight, but they're relaxed, right? You don't see their face just all when they're running, right? Their face is nice and relaxed. Their hands are normally relaxed. They're not clenched in fists, but the rest of their body is nice and rigid. It's stiff when it needs to be. So they get a lot of efficient movements throughout their run, just like any other sport, you know. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's perfect. Then kind of gearing into the next question. So I know kind of talking through the phone, you've done like different things, like you were in a seminar about like pain-free training. Could you give some people in the insight of like, what are some ways that you can, what are some ways that you can be better with your training and like kind of getting to the root of the problem? So like one thing we talked about was like the toenail analogy. Like, could you go like further into that and how maybe something may be affecting you and you don't realize it?
Yeah, definitely, man. So just to give everybody else a little bit of insight, we had a right-handed pitcher. He had been starting to complain about elbow pain, arm pain throughout the first 4 weeks while he was throwing. And it just got progressively worse each week, more he threw. And it wasn't until we were talking about surgery is when he started saying like, oh yeah, my toe hurts. Okay, like which toe? And he points to his left foot. Have him take off his shoe, his sock, and we look at it, and there's a hangnail on his left big toe. Well, I mean, if he's a right-handed pitcher, then you know that your lead foot, you're coming off of that big toe. Well, that hangnail was causing pain, and so he would alter his foot mechanic just a little bit. But obviously, as we know, if you change one little aspect of our mechanics, it throws the rest of the chain off. And since it started at the base, it traveled to his ankle, to his knee, to his hips, to everything all the way up the chain, all the way up to his arm. And it created enough torque and it changed the position just enough to where it almost ended his career, man. So a 20-minute fix almost ended this guy's career, you know? And it's not just pitchers that we can relate this to. Anybody who's ever played basketball, you roll your ankle, right? That's a big one. You're still expected to, you know, get back on defense. And so rolled ankle, it changes your gait, you know, even the way you walk as far as like how your foot's supposed to plant. We're a lot more cautious. Our body has a safety mechanism, right? It keeps everything tight. That's why we start limping. One I think that gets overlooked a lot is creating soreness in our athletes. During season, a lot of young coaches, they just want to have the big numbers on their athletes' lifts. But we have to remember that they are not weight room warriors, right? They could care less about the weights normally, right? And this is just a generalization with it, but they are there to play a sport. They love their sport.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to sit here and be a weight room warrior, then I mean, obviously they would pick up weightlifting. You know, they have to see that what you're doing is helping them get better at their sport. How does it transfer over, right? But let's say I have a basketball player and I just decided to crush the hell out of them. You know, let's go pure strength. We were doing 5x5s, right? The next day they get on court, you just messed up their entire game, right? Let's say they were getting paid to play. So you got them sore. Now they can't perform optimally, right? More than likely they're going to sit there and try their best, right? But if you, let's say you had them do an arm workout. If you crush their arms, now they don't have a shot, right? And now you got to take a look at it from the athlete's point of view, which is, am I going to be making money or losing money because I didn't perform this game, right? And that's a big aspect I think that gets overlooked a lot is professionals, they get paid to play, right? If you do something that hinders that performance, then they're going to look at you and not trust you anymore.
Sure.
And when they don't trust you, I think they're going to have a lot of buy-in in your program. Probably not, right? So that's just something that we got to keep in the back of our head. There's a few people out there that are really hitting hard on this. So Brett Bartholomew hits on it. Nick Winkelman, he just came out with the language of coaching. They're always, or they have always been there as far as the coach being, you know, that type of person. He needs to understand his players, but it's not something that always gets talked about. And I think, I don't know if you've noticed these webinars that have been going on. There's a lot going on about coaching and how you talk to players. I mean, it's essentially the only thing we can do being in quarantine, you know? So it's been, in my eyes, redundant. You know, you can only say it so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Have your perspective on it. So hopefully that answers it, man.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I think that gives people a lot of insight to just kind of start the game where you said people may not realize like a small injury they have, especially something like in this case, something in the lower body starting the foot that leads up and you overcompensate and then you kind of end up leading to different issues. So maybe you start off with a foot injury and now it turns into a problem with your right glute or something like that. So it's definitely important to take care of the stuff, no matter how small it is, like when it happens, so it doesn't come to bigger problems. But kind of going and continuing on with the communication thing, could you kind of talk more about like maybe someone who's in the youth and maybe got less experience versus someone who's like communicating with someone who's a little bit further on, maybe like a college athlete or even like professional, and how that would look different?
So in my experience, I have started to learn that it's a dialogue, depending on who you're talking with, right? So Brett Bartholomew goes deep into into like the different personalities and how to talk to different types of people in his book, Conscious Coaching, excuse me. And I think it's about 100 pages just on different types of personalities, right? As far as like the youth athlete, I've started to learn that if you can break it down Barney style, for lack of a better term, where they can understand it and repeat it back to you, that means they have a true understanding, right? But if you can't break it down and you want to say a bunch of big words, then do you truly understand what it means?
Sure.
Right? And then obviously throughout like middle school, high school, college, you have a lot more say in what the athletes do. So let's take college, right? College, they have to be in the weight room. They have to do this. They have to do that, right?
Sure.
So that's their program. And this is one thing that I learned quickly being at the professional level is that they get paid to be there. It's their job. They have to? No. I mean, they could essentially tell you to fuck off, pardon my language.
Oh, you're
But
good.
they don't have to, right? If they want to sit there and not do anything all day, they can, right? It's just like if I wanted to go to my work and just sit there, cool. How long is it going to last, though?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So players get traded all the time. It's something that they got to keep in mind too. But again, it goes back to that's their sport. They're not playing a sport when they're in the weight room with you. So they're not seeing how it transfers. Right. So it's just really taking a step back and looking at it from their perspective, your perspective, and then step outside the box altogether and seeing, okay, what's actually going on? What's underlying this, right? And so the more you build on that trust, the easier things get, right? So no matter who you're talking to, I think as long as the trust is there, you're going to get a lot further with it than if you just walk in kind of like the new manager and just start changing everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's just not going to work.
Yeah, sure. All right, we're going to kind of shift gears here, but something that I saw you've been working with on your Instagram kind of late is VBT training. So could you kind of just give like a brief overview of like what it is and kind of why you got into it and what you're hoping to get out of it?
Yeah, definitely, man. So VBT, velocity-based training. I first started getting exposed to this with Chris Toombs. He's the head strength conditioning coach for the Seattle Seawolves, which is the rugby team over here.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out. He let me sit in on one of the practices, and I started noticing he was using this little device that's probably about that big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was having his athletes with the band on the hex bar deadlift just pull up, and he had it on his phone where it was reading X amount of meters per second. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. What's that, Chris? And so he started talking to me about it. Essentially, it measures bar speed, and it's really normally for like the relevant lifts or whatever it is that you're trying to measure. It really dials in like the training loads, which is beneficial if you can see. Obviously, you know, there are great days, there are good days, and then there are just shit days.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The VBT keeps everything honest, right? So if you just really burnt out your CNS a couple days before and you're really not ready and you're used to, let's take a squat. You're used to moving 225 at 1 meter per second, right? Well, you come in today and 225, it just looks slow as shit. Drop the weight,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But all I want you to do is hit a certain range. Okay, so if we start talking strength speed, we're talking anywhere from 0.75 to 1 meter per second. And obviously, the faster the bar moves, the more we're getting into the speed side of things. So it really keeps you honest. It really dials in those training loads, which I absolutely love.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And kind of continuing on, I know you're someone who's very into investing in yourself and continuing to read, which is awesome. So what's something like a book or something you'd recommend or something you read of late and kind of what you got out of it? I know we kind of went over a few, but is there one like that really hit home for you, a book that like has helped you in your life and your growth?
Yeah, definitely, man. Where do I start? I hope you got all day. So if we're talking training, there are two that I'm just going to say outright. First one was Peak by Dr. Mark Bubbs. This is one that you don't have to read cover to cover. It's more of a reference book,
Mm-hmm.
and he dives super deep into it. This is one of those reads that you got to read at least 4 or 5 times to catch everything. Mine is filled with bookmarks as things I want to go back to later.
Sure.
Dives super deep into it. He talks a lot about sleep and recovery, your nutrition, and then at the very end, he talks about coaching, right? How to build that trust and build that culture with it. The next one is going to be High Performance Training for Sports by David Joyce. I just got this one. I've skimmed through it. I like its layout because, again, it's a reference book. It's training, right? You don't have to sit there and read it cover to cover. You can, okay, I want to go and look and learn more about this specific topic. Cool. Awesome. Go research it, right?
Mm-hmm.
he does a really good job from what I've read so far and laying it out. It breaks it down to where it's easily understandable. One that actually changed the mind for me was Mindset by Carol Dweck. It goes big onto the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's a shift in between like where you're at, right? No one's the extreme of this one or this one, but it gets you to reflect on how people have talked to you in the past and how you've talked to people in the past. And it really just opens your eyes. It talks about parenting, business, coaching, right? So I think that one's had a bigger impact recently than any of the other ones. Leadership, Jocko Willink, he came out with Extreme Ownership. I have not read it yet, but it's on my list. I did read his Leadership Strategy and Tactics, which is kind of like the upgrade from Extreme Ownership. He talks a lot about it in there, but he just talks about different leadership qualities and how to talk to people in different situations, which I thought was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about coaching itself, I've already mentioned Conscious Coach by Brett Bartholomew. I'm about halfway through that right now. I'm loving it. It takes a different aspect, and it also gives you an insight to his background, which I think is pretty cool. A lot of people don't do that when they start writing books, so you don't get a feel for the actual person. You just get a bunch of information, which can be hard to relate to and digest,
Sure.
Coach to Coach by Martin Rooney is on my list. Emily actually sent it to me for my birthday. And so I'm looking forward to getting into that one. I heard it's really good. And I've already mentioned Nick Winkelman's Language of Coaching. And I've started following him a lot more on like YouTube, Instagram, stuff like that. And I really like the information he's been putting out. So I'm excited to see what he has to say and how it actually differs from Martin Rooney and Brett Bartholomew. So
I'm definitely going to look into some of those for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, man, I'll send them to you.
I appreciate that. Kind of like long-term right now, are you taking it kind of day by day? Is there like a long-term vision of kind of what you want to be doing? Like this is exactly who I want to be working with, or like this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah. So I've got short-term goals, medium goals, and long-term, right? Mm-hmm. Again, this year has been something that I've really shifted all my mindset to. So I've never used to set goals, like writing them down or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But since the beginning of January, it's been a goal to talk to at least 3 people in our industry, whether it's just reaching out, hey, what's going on? I like your content, versus in-depth conversation, kind of like what we had, right?
Sure.
And I would really like to maintain and nurture those relationships, right? So my goal is to build an authentic relationship, not a transactional one, right? Where,
hey,
I did this for you, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
So everybody's always got that in the back of their mind, like, what is it for me? And I think that's the worst mentality to go into anything with, right? So if I can help you, let me know. I will try, right? If you need $100 and I have it, sure, go for it, right? Obviously, we got to have that trust a little bit and have a good relationship. But, I mean, it's there, right? So reading at least 1 book a month has been a big goal of mine, too. I haven't been a big reader, if anybody knows me. I suck at it. I hate reading. I'm not one of those guys who can just sit down and get lost in a book. I have to make myself do it. So it's just been about 10 pages a day, and it's been working so far. I'm actually ahead of schedule. I'm proud to say on that one. So far I've read about 5 or 6 books, and I'm supposed to be on 4. So pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
A little bit longer down the road, I actually want to work with my mentor, Tim. He's actually in charge of setting up a performance center here in Seattle, or Auburn, Washington. He's working with Big Box Gym to build this performance center, and they're modeling it more or less after Exos, which I'm pretty excited about that one. So I'm throwing my name in the hat with that one, see if I get picked up. I mean, there's a lot of big competition going on with it, a lot of big names. So we'll see kind of how that goes. But I think it'll give me a good base to understanding the youth athlete and how to develop that long-term development with them. So I thought that'd be pretty cool. And then once I have enough background with that, I think it would be nice to transition into another professional team. So I'm thinking NFL, NBA. I thought that'd be pretty fun. Like I said, more explosive, more my style. I love the culture of it. And then the ultimate goal would be to open my own performance center. So Luca Hosevar down in Renton, he has one of the best performance centers / gyms that I've ever seen. And he basically envisioned everything that I did in 2015 when I first started everything. So it's pretty cool. I want people to come to me to train, I want to build that reputation and build that culture where people actually want to come train with me, not just general population, not just tactical, but like the elite athletes as well. So I think that would be my ultimate goal probably in about 15 years. That's where I'm actually seeing everything being fruitful at that point.
Sure.
So
that's good stuff, man. This kind of leads into the next question, but you kind of semi-answered it. But what are some advice you'd give to someone in terms of training or something you learned throughout your years to better go about their training, nutrition? And then what are some ways that you think some advice you'd give to someone in terms of like the way you've grown? Just from like hearing your story, you could just hear there's been like a shift in your growth. And you kind of gave a few ways too with like, it was kind of in there, like the small goals of like 10 pages a day. And you've already coming up on like 5 books, which is insane. When you think like 10 pages, you're like, oh, it's nothing, but it compounds over time with small goals just turn into something bigger. So what are like some goals you'd give for someone in terms of training? You go in depth or as vague as you want with the 2 questions. So like I'd say training, and then in terms of like just growing, just like personally in ways you've seen that in like personal development.
So we'll start with the personal development. Mindset is huge. I was always the person who just liked the validation, and that was what I was always seeking. That's why I did certain things. When I shifted my mindset from wanting to giving, everything just did a 180 and things started just expanding and growing a lot faster. I started understanding that things are never going to be perfect. Mistakes are part of the journey. The faster you make those mistakes, the faster you grow. So if we take Instagram, right, there's going to be a lot of people that'll sit there and argue a certain point. But if you have a rhyme and reason for whatever it is that you're training, then who cares, right? You're trying to get this specific thing with it, right? Networking has helped my growth as far as like the mindset as well. I get different perspectives. So when me and you talked, I learned, more about like the online training, how your story actually inspired me to get off my ass and start doing things as well. So just so you know, that helped me out, man. Having a support system also helps drastically, whether it's friends, mentors, spouse. For me, it's having my girl, my family, and my mentors and friends, man. They are always brutally honest with me, which I absolutely love. If I have an idea and it sucks, they tell me about it, or if I think this certain view of training is going to work better than this one, Emily, she keeps me in check. She goes, but did you think about this? I'm like, oh shit, no. All right, cool. So it's a great back and forth, right? It's a great dialogue that I absolutely love. Now, as far as training and nutrition, I've already mentioned, be constant or consistent with it, right? Don't go all in, I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make. They get it in their head like, yeah, I got to eat broccoli, rice, and boiled chicken for 8 months, and it's like, if you're a competitive bodybuilder or physique competitor, hell yeah, go for it. You're not eating for taste anymore. You're eating to get a certain look, right? That's your goal. Cool.
Sure.
But if your goal is to be a better athlete, you better learn how to recover. And that's talking about sleep. Nutrition plays a huge role into that. Make sure you're getting enough carbs, and Peak goes big into that, like high carb, low carb, stuff like that whole keto thing that's going on right now, which don't get me started on it. Right. Let's see. If you fail, because everybody does fail, especially when it comes to nutrition, don't beat yourself up over it. One salad is not going to make you skinny. One burger is not going to make that much of a difference. It's how many of those in a week are you having, right? It's that compounding effect that really adds up. So if you went 2 days eating great and you had a cheat meal and you're like, shit, and you just threw everything away, then, you really need to reevaluate what you're doing and why you're doing it. Right. So, I already talked about what are you willing to sacrifice? That's a really big thing. But when it comes to nutrition, I'm also big on flexible dieting, man. I really like being able to have my cake and eat it too. Right? It's all about moderation. If we take somebody who eats ice cream 7 days a week, right after dinner, their goal is to lose weight. I'm not going to tell them to stop eating ice cream. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to be like, screw you, guy, right? So my goal would be to cut them down from 7 days to 4 days, right? If they were eating 2 cups of ice cream, I don't know who measures ice cream in cups, right? But for argument's sake, they were eating 2 cups a day, and now you cut them down to 1 cup a day, right? So as long as you get the long term, they're still eating it. They're still getting that satisfaction. It's just not as often, And then if you, again, cut it down to half a cup, well, you just cut everything down by 3/4 of a cup, right? Or 1 3/4, however you want to look at it, right? So it's crazy to see how everything goes into it, where it's that consistency that really plays a role. If you're training consistently and you're eating consistently what you're supposed to, then you're going to get a lot longer term benefits and results,
That's good stuff. I think people get a lot out of that, because a lot of people like to just go all in right away, like you were saying, and that's when they're like, all right, this is not like maintainable, and then they're like, I'm done with this completely, versus setting small goals, slowly achieving those, increasing the goals. So maybe this week I'm going to park further from work and I'm going to burn extra calories. That's going to add up week to week. And then next week I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk a little more. But just small goals really do compound over time. So there's a lot of good takeaways there. Where's a good place where everyone can find you? Like Instagram or email or anything like that?
Instagram's probably the easiest. My handle is James the effing trainer, underscores in between the words. It's just a picture of me in a beanie. But I get a lot of I don't want to say scrutiny, but scrutiny for the name of having effing in there. And people are like, why are you doing that? It's not professional. And it's just like, well, if you can't find that like funny, and I don't know if I want you to be working with me and or even know me at that point. So I just find it fun to keep everything nice and lively. So
I like it. Like the Gary Vee mentality, like when people like call him out for swearing, he's like I swear, like it's just a part of who I am. I'm not gonna change who I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If you don't like me, then I don't want to work with you. But if you, I think it makes everything a little bit more authentic, right? Instead of trying to be somebody that you're not.
Sure.
So, to me, it makes sense. Others, maybe not. So, it is what it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week. And James, thank you for coming on. It's definitely very insightful. I've talked to you a few times, but both times I've gained a lot of knowledge and insight, and definitely reading material as well that I'm definitely going to get into. But thanks for tuning in, guys. And then just be on the lookout for another episode coming up next week.
Thanks, guys.